In our last lesson, we looked at the idea of what must I do to be lost. And we went to 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 8. And we noted how it shows that those who do not obey the gospel of Jesus Christ will be lost. And so that gives us an understanding. There's something that we must do, and it's considered obedience to God's gospel. The good news that Jesus Christ died, was buried, and raised on the third day. Now, Jesus Christ dying and being buried and being raised on the third day doesn't hold any commands in it. Somehow we obey the gospel of Jesus Christ, and so the gospel obviously is more than only what God does. The gospel includes the good news, that's what gospel means, includes the idea that we have an opportunity to be saved if only we will what? That's what I'd like for us to look at in the next few lessons. What is required for us to obey the gospel? Well, the very first thing that we come up with, John 3:16, is a very common idea, and it certainly is something that most everyone agrees with. The Bible clearly says one must do to be saved. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That is certainly something that's required for one to be saved. It's the reason that some people will be lost, because they're not willing to believe. They don't believe in Jesus Christ. That's why Jesus Christ, who died for the entire world, and yet few will be saved, because there's something they didn't do. God has done everything he's going to do. So now we need to consider, what does that mean to believe? Well, of course, when you look at the Bible defines itself the best. Jesus Christ in John chapter 14, verse 1, has at that point in the gospel, he has told his disciples that he is going to be leaving them. And they obviously were very upset, because Jesus says these words to them in John 14, verse 1. Do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. Now notice how Jesus is saying that. He's saying they shouldn't be troubled. They should believe. See, their hearts were not set to the point of trusting Christ, of trusting what he has said, to the point of keeping them from being troubled. Jesus had told them that he was going to die and he was going to rise again. But they were troubled because he was going to be leaving them. Jesus told them that he had a mission for them to go on, that he was preparing them for something. But they were troubled because he was going to be leaving them. Jesus Christ was saying, trust me. Trust what I've told you. Trust that I'm going to take care of you. In fact, the very next verse, he tells them exactly that. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you. For I go to prepare a place for you. I will go and prepare a place for you. I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Jesus Christ tells them he's not going to leave them forever, but he's going to be coming back for them, and they needed to trust him. That trust would have kept them from being troubled as they were. So there's what it means to believe. Belief is not just an intellectual idea. Yes, I know that fact. Believe is something that causes someone to do something. In John 3:36, Jesus clarifies that even a little bit more. Now, this is only 20 verses away from John 3:16. This defines what it means to believe. Notice what Jesus says, just 20 verses after he said what he did in John 3:16. He who believes in the Son has eternal life. That sounds like John 3:16. But he who does not obey the Son will not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. Now, that kind of seems to some people to add something additional, but it doesn't. Jesus Christ is defining what it means to believe. If you believe in him, you are going to obey him. If you truly believe and trust Jesus, You're going to take his teachings and you're going to take his commands and you're going to make them a part of your life. You're going to follow him. This idea of belief is necessary. Remember what happened with Eve all the way in the beginning when Satan was tempting her? Eve knew what God had said. You eat of that tree and you'll surely die. Satan tempted her and said, you will not die. Now Eve had a decision to make. Is she going to believe God or is she going to believe Satan? If she believed God, she wasn't going to eat of that tree. She didn't believe God. She ate of it. She didn't trust him. Didn't trust him to know what was better for her. And so Eve sinned. All the way from the beginning, that's the way it occurs. When one is truly believing in God, if one really trusts God, what God is teaching, one is going to be obedient to God. In the Old Testament, we have many examples of it, but the Hebrew writer gives us several of those examples. One particular example uses that word about belief, except it puts 2 letters in front of it, unbelief. And note what unbelief is. I'm going to start with verse 14. For we have become partakers of Christ if we hold fast. The beginning, we're in chapter 3, verse 14. For we have become partakers of Christ if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end. While it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts, as when they provoked me. For who provoked him when they had heard? Indeed, did not all those who came out of Egypt, led by Moses? And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest? But to those who were disobedient. So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. Now notice that there's that same connection that Jesus Christ made in John 3:36. The Hebrew writer is making it here in John chapter 3, verses 18 and 19. Let me read those 2 verses again. And to whom did he swear they would not enter into his rest, but to those who were disobedient? So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. Being disobedient means that you have unbelief. It means you don't believe. Believing means you're going to be obedient. It all comes down to trust. For the Israelites in the wilderness, their trust was not there, so they grumbled. They fought against Moses and Aaron. They considered going back to Egypt. It caused their actions to be ungodly. We certainly do have a part to play in our salvation. We must obey the gospel of Jesus Christ, and belief is certainly a part of it.